Student learning outcomes. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to rewrite a given equation in one of the following forms: slope-intercept form, standard form, and point-slope form. So here is a summary of forms of linear equations. An equation can be written in any of the three forms. Let's start with standard form first. Standard form is where you have the x term first, then y, and then the constant number is by itself on the other side of the equal sign. So again, x first, then y, and then your constant, your number, is on the right side. Next, we have slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is always solved for y. Y is always on the left side by itself. And then on the right side, you have your slope and your y-intercepts. Now, slope is indicated by an italic M, and behind it, you will see the x. In the back, you will find the slope-intercept. Slope-intercept is represented by the letter B. The last form is point-slope form, and point-slope form, you have here y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So we know that m, as I said, just stated earlier, that m is your slope. You will be plugging points into the sub 1 points only. So into x sub 1 is where you will place your x value that you're plugging in. And into the y sub 1 is where you're going to plug in your y value. We'll talk more about that later. The one thing you need to know is that for standard form, the coefficient of the x term should always be a number that is greater than or equal to 1. In other words, for standard form, a, which is the coefficient of x, a cannot be a negative or a fraction. If it is, then you should go through the process of rewriting it so that a, which is the coefficient of x, is not a negative or a fraction. Now, that's with standard form only. That's what we call the standard form of writing it. And we'll talk more about that later. So here we're given an equation in slope-intercept form, and we know it's in slope-intercept form because it is solved for y. And then on the other side, you have your slope, which is in this case -6, and you have your y-intercept of 1. Now in this, we are asked to rewrite this equation in standard form. And recall, standard form is where x is first, then y, and then the number by itself is on the right side of the equation. So the first thing we need to do is to move the x term from the right side to the left. And in order to do that, we're going to have to do the opposite operation. So here we have -6x. The opposite of -6x would be +6x. So I'm going to have to add 6x to each side. And once we do that, we now have the equation in standard form where the x term is first, then y, and then the constant, the number, is on the right side all by itself. And there you have it. In this next example, we're asked to write this equation in standard form. Right now it is in slope-intercept form. Recall, slope-intercept form is where it's solved for y. And on the right side, you have your slope and y-intercept. Now the first thing to getting this in standard form, which is x first, then y, and then the number by itself on the right side, we need to move again the x term over from the right side and move it over to the left side of the equation. So to do that, we have to do the opposite operation. The opposite of negative 1/3 x is positive 1/3 x. So we're going to add 1/3 x to each side. So we almost have it in the correct standard form. Remember, the correct standard form is the coefficient of x. It cannot be a fraction or a negative. It needs to be a number 1 or greater. And since it's not, what we're going to have to do is get rid of this fraction. And recall that to remove a fraction or to clear it, all you have to do is take the denominator of that fraction and multiply all parts of the equation by that denominator. In this case, the denominator is 3, so we're going to multiply all 3 parts of the equation by 3 so that we can clear the fraction. When we do so, it's going to look like so. Next, let's go ahead and do our cancellations. Anything on top that's the same as the bottom, we can cancel out that common factor of a 3 from the first term. Once we do that, that's going to leave us with x plus 3y equals, and let's see, negative 3 times positive 3 is negative 9. So our equation in standard form would be x plus 3y equals negative 9. And there you have it. In this example, we're asked to rewrite the equation in slope-intercept form, meaning solve for y, everybody else on the other side using the rules of equation. And then lastly, put it in standard form. Recall standard form is where x is first, then y, and then the number by itself, the constant, is on the right side of the equation. So let's go ahead and begin by writing it in slope-intercept form, solving for y. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and on the right side combine or use the distributive property here. We want to distribute that negative 3 to both terms that are inside the parentheses. So that's going to be negative 3 times x, which is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 4. Remember, a negative and a negative multiplied together will be a positive, so that's positive 12. Our last step to getting y all by itself, right now, 2 is on the side with y. So to get y by itself, we have to remove that 2, and to do that, we have to do the opposite. The opposite of positive 2 is negative 2. So we're going to go ahead and subtract 2 from each side. When we take 2 from the right side, we have a total of 12. If we take 2 away, that's going to leave us with 10 on the right side. And so writing it in slope-intercept form then would be y equals negative 3x plus 10. Lastly, we want to write it in standard form, and to do that, we just simply have got to do one step. Remember, standard form is where x is first, then y, and then the number by itself is on the other side. So all we have to do here is simply move negative 3x from the right side over to the left side. And to move it, we have to do the opposite operation. The opposite of negative 3x is positive 3x. So once we add 3x to each side, we have the equation in standard form, which is 3x plus y equals 10. And there you have it. So just make sure by the day of the test that you know how to convert an equation to any of the 3 forms, because the answer choices on the test could be in slope-intercept form, all the choices, or it could be in standard form or point slope form. So just make sure you know how to convert between the various forms.